G'day, I'm the Thorough Tank, and this is a quick reference guide to the Darkheart Thicket dungeon on Mythic Keystone difficulty. This guide is designed to cover major trash mechanics that can wipe you, important shortcuts that will save you time, and a boss overview for every boss. It's not designed to be an exhaustive guide to every little part of the dungeon, and it will assume a basic level of familiarity with the dungeon, perhaps from a DPS or healer perspective, or from a lower difficulty. First few pulls here aren't too difficult for the tank. Just watch out for the cats that jump. The owls will do a screech effect that will disorient you if it hits you. Just make sure you interrupt them, especially when they're targeting you. The bears have a frontal cleave, which you need to avoid pointing towards your group. And the adds that they spawn leave behind patches of nightmare ground. Just make sure you keep the bear out of those patches so that your melee can DPS him without standing in it. Keep the casters interrupted as best you can. Their despair cast will do a fair amount of magical damage to you as the tank. Star Shower is also pretty important to interrupt, although all of the damage from that is avoidable, it just leaves patches on the ground. A good group should not have a problem staying out of it. The only real dangerous mechanic in this next pull is the Hippogriff's propelling charge. Just take a quick step to the side when they wind it up and make sure you don't get hit. Up ahead is the first of three important areas where you can save time on your run by making sure you only pull the bare minimum necessary. Grab this patrolling group of three that's walking around, but be really careful when you're fighting them. There's a lot of extra packs scattered around and you don't want to pull anything extra. Up ahead, carefully stick to the right as you come around this pack here, and you can skip them completely. Watch out for the patrol that will be walking up and down the path. Just grab them, finish them off quickly. These bears hit really hard with both of them attacking you at the same time. Rotate through some strong defensive cooldowns until at least one of them is dead. Backpedal into the green barrier when you first pull them. That starts the boss introduction and saves a bit of time. And make sure you keep moving the bears as necessary to pull them out of the red stuff on the ground, making sure that your melee have a comfortable area in which they can continue to deal damage to the enemy. This boss is mechanically very simple, but he hits extremely hard and your healer has a lot of other stuff going on besides worrying about you, so do your best to reduce your own damage intake as much as possible. Primal Rampage is the main ability that you have to watch out for. He'll turn into a bear, knock everyone back, and then charge towards you. You want to avoid this because it does a large amount of damage. Fortunately, there's a really easy way to make it much easier for you. Take a good look at these two rock pillars on the right here. Tank the boss right next to one of these. The reason for this is really simple. When he does his Primal Rampage, put the rock in between you and him. As soon as he tries to charge at you, it'll cancel the ability completely and you won't take any damage at all. Depending on the random location that the red adds spawn and drop their corruption patches, you might have to adjust your position away from these rocks if they get surrounded. If that happens, there is another rock on the opposite side. If you want, you can move the boss over to that location. If he's nearly dead, it's usually not worth it. Once he carks it, just head over to the next pull. Now these dryads are not very dangerous, but they are incredibly annoying. At about half health, they'll attempt to jump away. Now, a Blood Death Knight can completely ignore this because they can just pull the dryad back, but other tanks, you'll need to move the plants back on top of them for cleave. This pull is the second area where some clever tricks can let you skip a pack entirely and save some time. This dryad on the left will patrol around in the following path, ending in one of two locations. When she's in the leftmost spot, hit her with a CC that will keep her in place without engaging in combat, such as entangling roots, a hunter trap, or a demon hunter's imprison. On teaming week, this extra Rotheart keeper will also need to be CC'd to allow you to safely get past. Hug the right side and kill the next patrol. Position yourself so that when the dryad jumps, she jumps away from you and not towards the skipped mobs. In this next pack, you can't hurt the plant lashes until the keepers are dead, so kill them first. The mushrooms that spawn will do a lot of damage if popped, so just kite around the center of the room and avoid them as they spawn. If they get overwhelming, you can pop a cooldown and run through them to pop them, but if you're going to do that, make sure you clear your group out of the way first because the destruction of them is an AoE pulse effect. If you have a rogue or a paladin or something like that in your group as well, they can also pop an immunity ability and pop as many as they want. If you're unlucky, these next 5 mobs here can be pretty spread out, so make sure you use a defensive cooldown if you need to go out of range of your healer to gather them. They hit pretty hard, so you don't want to be getting smacked when your healer can't heal you. Apart from that, just interrupt the fears with special attention on the ones that are targeting you or your healer. This boss is pretty simple overall. Keep him faced away from the group for his flame breath. Tank the small adds that spawn from the strangling roots. Use defensive cooldowns when you get picked up. Remember, you can continue to do your normal rotation while you're being picked up in the air. You're not stunned. The packs of blood slimes in this area can just be AoE'd down. Make sure nobody's standing next to them when they die. The blood elementals up next will drop blobs of red goo from the ceiling, which will knock you back, and they'll do a frontal charge attack which you need to move out of. When they die, they'll split into 4 smaller adds. Just kill these quickly. They only do one dangerous cast, Blood Metamorphosis. Just make sure you interrupt that if they try to cast it. These packs of slimes up ahead actually aren't linked, which means when you pull them, some of them won't always come when you pull the others. To get around this, attack these ones here at the back. As they come towards you, they'll bring the others with them. You don't need to kill the last elemental that's in your way. Just wait till he's on the left and run straight past him. If you have a druid, you can entangling roots it to give you a little bit more time to get through. The dragon boss works on a simple cycling rotation of abilities that come in the same order at the same time. Breath of Corruption, take a step to the side to avoid the debuff. Next, the downdraft, stack your group directly in the middle of his hitbox to minimise the pushback. Spread out immediately after the downdraft to ensure the rocks get dropped away from the centre of the boss. The cycle repeats from here. Sidestep the breath, stack for the pushback, spread for the rocks. Important warning for tanking this boss. From time to time you may need to move him if rocks end up in a bad place. Make sure that you are not out of melee range during the Breath of Fire. If you are, when he starts to cast the breath, instead of casting in your direction, he'll immediately turn and fire it straight at somebody else. They probably won't be ready for it because it doesn't happen for them very often, and they'll just die. The name of the game in this last hallway is all about magic damage, both on you and the group. The Shadow Bolt from the Summoner hits you extremely hard. The Dread Inferno from the Imps hits your group extremely hard. And the Curse of Isolation requires your group to spread out. The pack that will stress you in terms of physical damage taken is the Bats. They melee extremely hard, but they don't do anything else, so just make sure you keep your cooldowns up and your healer is ready for them, and you'll be fine. The pack up ahead can be skipped in a couple of different ways if you have the ability to. Invisibility potions are the easiest and most reliable way to do it, but if you have a rogue, they can help you skip the pack without having to use up your potion cooldown. First, you sap the bat at the back, then you distract the stalker at the front to face the opposite direction, then you use Shroud of Concealment to walk you through to the left. Up to Xavius. He is a very difficult, very unforgiving, and worst of all, random fight. There are 3 main repeating abilities to know about. The first of these abilities is Nightmare Bolt, which puts a circle around a targeted player. Someone has to stand in that circle for the duration of the debuff or you can't do anything. The next is Growing Paranoia, which puts a red spider web around a player and you will be feared if anyone stands in it. The third ability is Feed on the Weak, which is a high damage channeled ability which will target a random person. The problem, and what makes this fight so difficult, is that all 3 of these abilities can target anybody in the group. That means you can get some crazy combos that you have to deal with. The biggest source of randomness is the Feed on the Weak channeled ability. On a high level tyrannical key, like you're watching here, a DPS player will need a substantial defensive cooldown just to survive it. If it happens to target the same person over and over again, they will simply run out of ways to defend themselves. This is why it's extremely important to handle all of the abilities correctly and quickly. The random nature of the fight will do more than enough to mess you up without mistakes causing the same thing. Last thing to be aware of, at 50% the boss will channel a large AoE ability which will do a massive amount of damage to everyone in the group. Even as the tank, you'll probably need a cooldown to survive this on higher keys, so make sure you're watching his health and are ready to pop a cooldown when it happens. After he casts it, purple meteors will rain down on the room for the rest of the fight. These do a lot of damage to players and buff Xavius' damage done when they touch him. It's tempting to try to move to avoid them, but don't. He casts too often and he'll just stop randomly when you're trying to move him, and you'll end up often just getting more stacks than if you just sat still. So it's just another random element you'll have to deal with, and just bear with it as best you can. As you can see, in this run we ended up with a highly depleted key and an exciting finish. This was the result of essentially some of the worst luck you can imagine, and from time to time that'll just happen to you as well. Don't worry too much about it, come back next time and hope for a better run of luck the next time. And that is a quick reference guide to Darkheart Thicket from the Thorough Tank. Leave a comment on this video with anything that I missed.